One of the hardest things we have to do as real estate agents is honestly handle rejections and setbacks all the time. Today, we're going to dive into a couple different ways to, I wouldn't say bounce back, but to change mindset and kind of push ahead in the face of all those different things. So let's talk about that. All right, so a little bit of a precursor to the actual points themselves. When I talk about setbacks and rejection, I'm not necessarily talking about cold calling, because in the cold calling world, oftentimes they teach you how to deal with rejection, meaning you call somebody and you have to get them on the phone and you're being rejected because they're not taking your listing appointment or whatever the case is. And so that's kind of rejection, and that you kind of like, they tell you off and you're moving on to the next one. And you're basically told no. So when in the cold calling world, you're getting told no a lot and very comfortable with that, and how to have, obviously dealing with rejections and then overcoming obstacles and then going back and forth. It's a whole sales thing. We're not talking about that today. What we're talking about is the time when your sister-in-law decides to use a different agent because she met her at a nail parlor, or your brother-in-law met him at a game and he's like, yeah, I have to use this guy because this and this, and then your mom does this, and family and friends, and there's real setbacks and kind of disappointments in your real estate career. Or you have a client that you've been working with for over 6 months, you're getting their house, this happened to me almost like a month ago, working with them for 3 months prior to that, getting their house ready, tell them all the advice, do this, work in my magic, get a loan for this, add to this house here, or add to your house here, this will bring this value, everything else, and then next thing you know, like, oh, we're going with a different agent. I'm like, what? Oh my God. Anyways, stuff like that. Yeah, that's the stuff we're talking about today. So that's when I say I want to frame it that way. It's really those like career setbacks that you're like this, like that are heart stabbing all the time. So just know that when we cover these core 3 things, keep those in mind, not necessarily cold calling. So let's dive into them right now. And the first way that I personally handle setbacks and rejection, and this is gonna be kind of cookie cutter, but I promise you to be a little more in depth, is the fact that you need to stay positive. Now, here are 2 ways that I oftentimes stay positive. They might be a little bit obscure, and maybe they'll work for you, maybe not, I don't know. But the first way is that I'm an Enneagram 7. And so if that means anything to anybody, this might apply to you. Now, the thing with an Enneagram 7 oftentimes is that they don't really want emotions coming in. It's usually a big problem with them is because like, I don't want emotions, I don't want to deal with it, it's not fun, it doesn't feel good, and they're just gone. That's why Enneagram 7 get in trouble, because there's happy-go-lucky positive all the time, and then it's like they come crashing down sometimes. How I've managed it in my life is I see emotions as at the door, and I own the house. I have to let the emotions in at some point. So oftentimes what I let them do is I let the emotions in, the rejection, the sadness, the inferiority I feel when it comes to those situations, or the scaredness, the panic, whatever you're feeling right now, let it inside. And eventually I let it inside. I deal with it as much as I can. I let it have its time. I let it go rifle through my cabinets, go through the medicine cabinets, look to see if I have eggs or flour, whatever the case is. And then I ask it to leave, because I've dealt with it. I've owned it to some extent. I've worked with it, but it's time to go. There's no real value to have any sort of those emotions play on your psyche for a longer period of time. Some people might try to add positivity to it and add things, and oftentimes people try to cover up the emotions. Not recommended. You definitely need to deal with it. You definitely need to not own it, but like let it invite itself into your house. But you need to ask it to leave. And so the reason I do that is because if you continue down this path of having these issues come to you in setbacks and things, eventually they will just break down the door. I've dealt with this personally. I've seen it happen to friends and family. It will break down the door. So it is crucially important to let them in, let them do their rifling things, and then ask them to leave. And then what happens oftentimes is that you'll feel better, hence the positive side, when it comes to all of it. I'm not saying that you should go read a positive self-help book. I don't really believe in those honestly too much. And I don't believe that you should go out and like mask and cover it. You will feel better when you address it, but you have to ask it to leave. That's the biggest thing. And part of the whole positivity thing, honestly, is a mantra that I've used to myself oftentimes, is if I'm really struggling to work through these emotions when it comes to rejection, is I have to know what is the main thing. What is the main thing of what we're doing here? Now, the most basic of all real estate is like, I'm here to make money. Great. If that is you, totally understand. Oftentimes, you're going to hit a point of your career where that's just not going to be enough, because you're like, I have a career, this, and this. I don't really care about the money because the pain is to this. I always recommend that you need to have a higher goal. I'm not saying like we need to go find God or anything like that. I'm saying you need to have a higher goal of what real estate is to you. Now that might come in years or decades or months, not sure. But when you start actually going through your real estate career and doing deals, listing and selling, you're going to find that goal overall, whether it's the goal of I love seeing people sell their home. I love some people that are really numbers driven. Like I want to maximize every single dollar out of that house to make sure they walk away happy. Or from the buyer side, it might be like, I want to find the perfect home for them. And so you have those goals baked in that. For my goal personally is when it comes to Northwest Arkansas, my goal every single day is helping as many people move here as possible. That's just as it is. And so when I do get rejection and something doesn't go my way, I have to tell myself the main mantra is keep the main thing the main thing. Now that could be making money for you. It could be squeezing the ever-living junk out of a seller with your buyer and getting them on every single thing. It could be maximizing this. It could be whatever the case is, or helping many people as possible. That's up to you. What I have to remind myself is that when I'm really struggling through some things, I have to keep the main thing. And then when you have those blinders on, it becomes very easy to focus on what you're trying to accomplish and do in this real estate career versus letting the other negativity come into play. Whoa. Before we jump on to the next point, every single week I put together a newsletter only focused on the critical things that you care about in real estate. And in this newsletter, we only talk about 3 different things: how to get more leads, how to duplicate your client base, which I am super passionate about, and how to actually close on more homes. This newsletter is truly insights from insiders. So if you want to make over 6 figures in your real estate business and at the same time grow your business, this by far is the best newsletter for you. And also, it is my favorite 4-letter F word, free. So enter your information below, name, email, and I'll make sure you get that newsletter sent to you right away. And the second way for us to handle both rejections and setbacks, and this is probably equally as important as basically staying positive. And the second thing is being around other agents. Now, some agents out there are horrible people. Let's just be clear. Stay away from them. You need to have a close group of people, and they don't need to be your best friends. They don't need to be the people like you're going to call every single weekend to hang out with. These are people that you hang around the office potentially, or you get to group with coffee, or maybe if you don't even have some of these people, just invite people out, start making those connections. Because when you start sharing these things, you're like, oh my God, let me tell you about this one time this person did this. And you're like, oh my God, that happened to you. And you start realizing that you're not alone. Whether you believe in anything with spirituality, but there is definitely power in feeling, not in a good way, you don't want to feel alone. That's when the devil, I don't want to say that word, but you get worse of yourself when you're alone and you feel alone. This has only happened to you. You're on an island and it only exists. And this is the worst situation because it's the blah, 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 and you start going down the pathway. This is why you need to kick that emotional person out the door because he doesn't need to exist there. Anyways, you're not alone. This has happened to thousands, if not millions of other real estate agents across America. You need to find people that you can tell your stories with, or you can share this and just kind of blow off steam. And then they can come back and be like, let me tell you about, not they're trying to one up you, but they're like, let me tell you about this one time. I know exactly what you feel because I did the exact same thing and it ended horribly. And you're like, well, that was crazy talk. So go talk to people, get around them. And oftentimes, I want to put a little asterisk here, but when you are in the ruts of real estate, it's really easy to find other people that are in the rut with you. Remember, you don't want to necessarily find people that are in 2 ruts and they keep going down the ruts, because eventually you might be like, this career is stupid, F this, and you're out. Don't want to do that. Avoid those people. What you want to find is people that are mature in the real estate world or in your same pathway, but are not in the same rut as you. That is crucially important. So keep that in mind is when you start working with these people or start hanging out with these people or asking, like, let me tell you my stories, don't let them be in the same position as you because you might not end up in a good position, to say the least. And the third and final way for us to handle rejections and setbacks in the real estate industry is you need to be continuously learning. When I define learning, I mean whether it's through YouTube or Audible or books or podcast, regardless, whenever you feed yourself good information and leadership information and growing, and whether even in the real estate industry, just the natural bend towards motion ahead in anything is better than just not doing anything whatsoever. Now, I do admit if you are into like the killer murder mystery stuff, you probably want to pause on that a little bit and find something more edifying in a sense of like growth driven. And so I would recommend things like if you are into podcasts, like I said, or Audible or YouTube, anything that is positive in nature and growth centric, focus on those for a week or 2 just to get out of this whole mindset. And so you might want to pause some of those other things. You might want to pause Netflix for a little bit on those certain things and start ingesting better information that will start motion in the right direction. Motion is incredibly powerful because once motion starts happening and you get out of the rut or you kick the person out of the house, then you can go in the right direction. So when you are going through the setbacks and whatever the case is, know that whatever you feed yourself is probably going to come back out. One of my life rules is whatever you feed grows. Super simplistic, but the idea is that if you feed your negative emotions, if you let the person rummage through your house, cook some cakes, eat some bread, start cooking, he's kicking his feet on the couch, crawling into bed, sleeping there, you're like, yeah, I'm feeding this thing. I got to get this person out of here. So you need to make sure that, remember that whatever you feed grows. If you decide to feed your negative emotion, why would it die? If you start feeding your positive emotion, of course it's going to live. Of course it's going to grow. Of course it's going to point you in the right direction. So whenever you're looking into getting out of this rut and you're starting to go through this whole process, whatever you feed grows. Make sure that you are feeding yourself with good, positive stuff. I'm not saying like go to the next Tony Robbins thing, but I'm saying is that read better things to push you forward.